This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. Private investigator Elvis Cole and his enigmatic partner Joe Pike race to find a terrifying, unidentified killer. In The Big Empty, an unpredictable, heart-wrenching thriller from acclaimed number one New York Times bestselling author and master of crime fiction Robert Crais, this is the 20th Elvis Cole novel. And to celebrate, Crais delivers Cole and Pike's toughest case yet, testing their loyalty to their clients and themselves in ways they've never been tested before. Robert Crais is the number one New York Times bestselling author of 24 novels, 20 of them featuring private investigator Elvis Cole and Joe Pike. Crais was named a Grand Master by the Mystery Writers of America and has received numerous awards, among them an Anthony Award from the World Mystery Convention, multiple Seamus and Barry Awards, and a Falcon Award from the Maltese Falcon Society of Japan. His novels have been translated around the world. A native of Louisiana, makes his home in Los Angeles. Happy to have Robert Crais join me now. Welcome.
Hey, Steve, it's good to be here. Thank you. I sound pretty good, don't I?
You
That
do?
intro. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, The Big Empty, where did the idea for this one come from? Some great characters in this one.
I've been circling this idea for 5 or 6 years, actually, before I could figure out how best to tell the story. I wanted to put Elvis Cole, who, for anyone who's read the books, Elvis is extremely loyal to his clients. He's extremely protective of his clients. But I wanted to put him in a situation that would be untenable, where any choice he made would lead to someone he cared about being hurt. Um, and then when I finally figured out what type of story I needed to put him in that situation, then I was off and running. And it does test him. It tests him to the limits.
No, it really does. And then Joe Pike. For those who don't know Joe Pike or might be new to your series here, how did you create Joe? He's such a cool character.
Well, I just modeled him after myself. Steve. Just come on, man, get up to speed. No, no. When I first created the guys, the first novel is titled The Monkey's Raincoat. I knew going in I wanted to do like a buddy picture uh, situation, and because I've always been a fan of the whole buddy picture vibe, right? I mean, Butch and Sundance, Cagney and Lacey, Batman. I mean, it seems natural not to have one person, but to have two people so they can play off each other. Uh, and Elvis came first. Um, as I, you know, I've always loved private investigator fiction. I grew up reading it, huge fan of the genre. So I knew I wanted to create a detective, but I wanted a detective who I could relate to and sort of who reflected the things I was interested in my worldview. So I took little tiny bits and pieces of myself. I'm not Elvis Cole, but I took little bits and pieces of myself and I populated his character with them. You know, the Disney icons that he keeps in his office and home, the Pinocchio clock, the Mickey Mouse phone, the loud Hawaiian shirts. Um, and as I thought about Elvis, I thought about Joe, and I decided Joe should be exactly the opposite of Elvis. If Elvis was gregarious and talkative, then Joe would be very silent and internalized. And little by little, the blocks came together, and to my mind, they just became the perfect duo. They're completely opposite, yet they share a love and respect and friendship that has turned out to be the core of the all the 20 books that I've written since that first book. I think it's probably the number one strength of the novels is the friendship between these two men.
Traci Beller is in this book, The Big Empty, a something you didn't have to deal with in the first book, an influencer.
An
I'm going to
influencer.
ask you about technology in a minute and writing with the new technology and different technology and ever changing technology.
Yeah.
But Traci, how did you create her?
Um, Traci Beller is a 23-year-old internet sensation. She's got 1.2 million followers across her socials, but she doesn't have those followers because she flies around in private jets, or she's beautiful like a movie star, or Ferrari. None of that. Traci Beller has this sort of wonderful girl next door quality uh, that makes everyone want to be her best friend. She's just a joy to know, and the people who see her online feel that too. She's a kid who grew up in the valley, uh, baking muffins with her dad. He's the one who taught her to bake ever since she was 4 or 5 years old. And when she was in high school, probably 14, 15 years old, she started posting little short videos of herself baking muffins. And those things took off. And now she's this enormously successful person. Um, there's a quality to her that I really liked and admired. And I think when Elvis Cole meets her, he immediately likes her and wants to help her. Despite her success, Traci's not happy. And the reason she isn't happy is because 10 years earlier, her dad, who she adored, went to work one day. He was a heating and air conditioning guy, went to work, and he never came home. And the cops couldn't find him. And 5 years later, her mother had dad declared dead. So her mom hired more investigators and they couldn't find her. And they came back and they said, listen, odds are he just left you. And Traci never believed it. He was wonderful. She loved him. He loved her. The world's greatest dad. She simply never believed it. And now she's hired Elvis Cole to find out what really happened.
Her father, Tommy, disappears in the sleepy town of Rancha. What is Rancha like? It is sleepy.
It's sleepy. It's sleep. It's Rancha is a fictional town,
Mm-hmm.
but it is set in the very western edge of the San Fernando Valley, out by communities like Calabasas and Hidden Hills, which are real places. And out there, back in the day, is where they used to film old westerns. The hills there are low and rolling, and they're covered with dead plants. It's hot, gets hot there, and it is empty. So the title "The Big Empty" not only refers to the place, but it also refers to the hole in your heart when you lose something that's precious to you, which could be Traci's father.
I want to come back to technology. I mentioned Traci is a popular influencer. How challenging, Robert, is it to deal with changing technology as you write your books?
It's not so much challenging. I wouldn't use the word challenging, but I'm carried along by the changes, and there's nothing I can do about it. For example, when I first wrote The Monkey's Raincoat and published it was 1987, people didn't have cell phones. Very few people had a car phone. So in the early books, Elvis Cole's always stopping at payphones to make calls. And I still, to these, when I get younger readers now who come to me and start reading the early books, they actually write to me or post on my Facebook page or X or something. And they say, I just read The Monkey's Raincoat. How come Elvis Cole doesn't have a cell phone? I said, dude, it didn't exist back then. So even though Traci Beller is a product of today, right, 1925, who knows what? I mean, 10 books from now, maybe there won't be social media influencers. I don't know, but I live in this world. So when I write, I reflect the world that's happening now.
And he can communicate with Joe and everyone a lot quicker, and they get places a lot quicker with cell phones. And we're not going to give away too much, but there is a scene where he drops a pin for everyone, the final scene, and that's something he didn't have to deal with.
No, it's changed radically. But again, I live in the world, so I know what people can do. I know what cell phones can do. I know what people can do. So of course, that's going to be reflected in the fiction. It is in many ways it makes things more challenging today because of what you said. Things move a lot faster. People are in communication almost instantaneously. So the stories, the way in which I tell my stories the plot moves I make, they're affected by this thing because I have to deal with them.
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm not a pantser. I figure most everything out before I begin writing. I spend a lot of time um, outlining and creating, or rather, I should say, creating and outlining. The outline doesn't come first, and it's not mechanical. I generally have a concept for the story, and then I create characters. Sometimes I'll have a character before I have a concept, and it never is linear. I like to think of it as almost in the beginning, almost spherical, because things can come from any direction. And after I have a lot of that kind of material down, then little by little, I sort of shape all that stuff into the arc of the story. And I begin to fill in the holes and the blanks in the opening. But I don't sit down and actually begin writing straight ahead narrative until I pretty much know 80% of the answers for everything that's going to happen. Um, the pantser thing, that's way too frightening for me. I don't have the courage for that.
Does writing energize you or exhaust you, Robert?
Both, absolutely both. The
Mm.
days are long, the days are hard. There are way more bad days than good days. But having said that, if I'm in the middle of a scene that's really like, and I'm locked in and I'm there with the characters in that place, and it's happening and the dialogue is good and I'm feeling the emotions that they're feeling, it's also extremely energizing.
What's the story behind you becoming a writer?
I've always wanted to write. I've wanted to write since I probably was in junior high school. Um, I was a voracious reader. I love to read. I love to watch movies. I love to watch TV, read comic books. I mean, everything. And where I come from, which was Louisiana, in that place and time. I mean, how do you become a writer? It wasn't anything I or any of my immediate friends and family could really relate to or knew anything about. So, like anyone else, I was supposed to do something real for a living, right? And something solid, get a good job. Um, so I studied engineering in school, but all that time I'm submitting short stories and trying to sell something somewhere. While I was in college, the first few short stories began selling. And after a handful of short story sales, I thought, you know, if I'm ever going to take a shot at being a full time writer, I should do this now. Otherwise, I'll just work for Exxon for the rest of my life. And not to disparage Exxon, but you get locked into a real job and then you start thinking about your pension and retirement. So I left school and came to Hollywood specifically to write for television. I didn't know anyone, didn't know how to write for television, never seen a script, but I knew if I was going to make my fortune, that's where it would be. Uh, and I did.
What's the best thing about being an author?
I'm living my dream. There's nothing else I would rather do. Okay, maybe an astronaut, but since that day is gone, I this is my dream come true. Writing is what I've always wanted to do. It's what I want to do now. I want to do it with just as much uh, passion and commitment as I've ever wanted to do it. And I get to do that. I get to wake up every day. I get to make up stories. Uh, and I get to tell them to people who seem to like them a very great deal. And it's a blessing.
When you were that a voracious reader in junior high, was there one book or author that really got to you, made you want to become a writer?
When I read everything, um, all all the different genres, mainstream fiction and not, but I think of all the writers I was reading at the time, probably the fantasist Harlan Ellison was the one who made becoming a writer seem possible. Uh, I loved Mr. Ellison's work. I loved his nonfiction work. He wrote a series of columns on writing for television that were published, called The Glass Teat, which was published in the LA Free Press and various free presses around. I used to drive from Baton Rouge to New Orleans just to buy copies of the magazine to read his columns. But he made it seem doable. He made it seem like something a person could do. He had been just a kid from Painesville, Ohio, when he went to New York and became a writer, made his dream come true, and and his column about writing television made TV writing seem it demystified TV. It made it seem like a goal that was attainable. And I think had it not been for reading uh, his column and his short stories and all the nonfiction he had written along with his fiction, I'm not sure I would have come here. But I read him and he inspired me, and I did come here. And I think everything that's happened since then, I owe a piece of it to him.
Robert, what do you find the most appealing in a book? The plot, the characters, or the language?
Well, if I have to pick one, character, it's always character. Uh, of course, character is revealed through plot and language and the other elements. But for me, it's all about character. Character comes first. A reader invests in the character. They don't invest in plot or language or pace. They invest in character. And then if the other things make it even better, then great. But you first you have to fall in love with the character, and the character takes you to all those other lands. So I concentrate on character first.
What is next for you and your writing? I'm assuming there's a number 21 in the works.
It's in the works. I'm just at the bare beginning of it. Maybe I've got like two paces through the door here, but another Elvis Cole. No, I'll always write Elvis. I mean, I'll just keep writing Elvis until they shut my lid. Elvis is in my future, big time.
The series continues, but you can enjoy this one now. It is a great, terrific book. The Big Empty, the 20th Elvis Cole and Joe Pike novel from #1 best-selling author Robert Crais. Robert, thank you so much for joining me.
Steve, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And this is the Speaking of Writers podcast. Hit the subscribe button. And by the way, if your indie bookstore does not carry The Big Empty, ask them to get it. I'm Steve Richards.